Welcome to the Green Goddess Podcast, where we explore the evolution of consciousness and sacred medicines. I'm your host, Tara. Today, our guest is Stasia Bliss. She's a good friend of mine. Stasia is an author, a kundalini coach, and a conscious mental health educator, as well as an intuitive, a healer, and many other things. Welcome to the show, Stasia.
Thank you, Tara. So happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you here. So, Stasia, I'm thrilled to have you on the show because we're going to discuss Ascension.
Yay, we're in it.
We are in it for sure. So tell me a little bit about what you feel is going on at this time. It's mid-October 2019.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like this is what the plant medicines have been preparing us all for, this kind of drawn out psychedelic adventure that we're entering with this ascension process. I really just feel like a journey, a psychedelic journey, is a condensed ascension experience where you get to go through the whole process in a small amount of time, and you get the initiations really quickly, and then you're dropped back into your life where you get to now utilize that wisdom.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of the sacred medicines that have most informed your ascension journey?
Well, I have kind of dabbled in most all. I definitely have had an extensive relationship with ayahuasca in years past that took me through a myriad of initiations and then kicked me out for a while. I have worked with the mushrooms, and LSD has been a big teacher for me. Even MDMA and DMT and so forth. And then cannabis is just one of my favorite plant medicines, has always been the goddess to me. So she's definitely taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking about you and how we've had a lot of good conversations around the concept of non-judgment.
Yes, we have. Yes. Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
The ascension journey is such a practice in releasing judgment, because we're having to do this integration of polarities to get to the unity field, right? So we are integrating the positive in our body, like the positive charge and the negative charge, the Ida and Pingala, the magnetic and electrical charge. We're learning to bring those together actually in the spine so that we have the experience of oneness like we have in a psychedelic journey, where when we get to that peak experience, we're experiencing pure unity field, pure love, God consciousness, source. And so in our lives, right, as we're walking through the journey, we get the opportunity to integrate with everything that comes up that we want to judge. And I know that I've said to myself, everything that I judge harshly, I end up having to do.
What do you mean?
Just like if I have a judgment towards something, like especially if it's I never would do that, or I never would think that, or I never, would be that, then it ends up that I have to go through that experience so that I release that judgment, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. And for me, I've had a lot of challenging experiences around judgment of self. The mind having this idea, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad.
Sure. And where do those thoughts come from, right? I mean, we get inundated with social conditioning and, programs when we're children, and the culture and the world that we've grown up in has been very black and white, very, good and bad, right and wrong, yes and no. And so, it's a bit challenging when we come to integrate polarities. And one of those polarities is a self-judgment, right? Is telling us that there's something wrong with us, even though the polarity of that is there's nothing wrong with us. Like everything is good with us, and that they're not opposites. They're actually different ends of the spectrum of oneness. So I think you and I have had the conversation. If there's something that you don't like about yourself, then trying to turn it around and say, like, how is this thing serving me? Like, what benefit is this bringing me? And there's always something to be found there.
Right. Always. Yeah. What can we cultivate? For me, there's a lot of times there's growing in compassion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even if it's just that, right?
Right. And that's a worthy and beautiful virtue.
Absolutely. Yeah, you brought up the concept of the Bodhisattva before with me, and this is, really the perspective of that is a Bodhisattva is one who is here to help the evolution of humanity by kind of like waiting till everyone's got it, is the idea. So, and the only way one can do that is if they literally were able to be non-judgmental and compassionate over every single condition so as to hold space for every single person. And so in that way, it's like anything that comes up as a trigger or an ouch or an I don't know or a judgment, it's the job of the Bodhisattva person to bring light and love and compassion to that too, so that every being who's experiencing that gets like an evolutionary tick up the scale, so to speak,
Oh, that's fascinating. So that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's like hardcore warrior work. It's like we get called into the most challenging situations of humanity. So that means the most challenging emotions, depression, anxiety, self-loathing, self-hatred, addictions of every kind, drug, alcohol addiction, love addictions, like all of abuse situations, anything that we would call the underbelly of reality. A bodhisattva or a light worker, truly, if you're truly in that level of the work, you are bringing your consciousness into that zone so that you can infuse it with love and light and acceptance. And that's the only way that those codes get like flipped, so to speak. They get, accepted into the wholeness so that everything comes. So if you look at it as people, you're accepting every single being as an important element in bringing love, compassion, so that everybody comes. Bodhisattva is like nobody's left behind. Everybody comes. That means everyone's lovable, just the way they are. I'm going to bring my light code to that place too.
Thank you. Yes, that's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful.
And to me, that's what the plant medicines have always taught me. Like they always, at the beginning of any journey, will always take me to the places in myself that I'm the hardest on myself, right? That's like your first initiations is like, where are you still judging? Where are you still loathing yourself and holding yourself back? And like, what things have you been doing that you're going to look back at and go, oh no, I haven't been eating right, or haven't been, treating my body right, or like whatever it is, the plant medicines bring that right in front of your face. And if you can never get past that and love it, you'll stay in what's called a bad trip the whole time. You'll just be in like self-loathing zone. But
Yes.
once we bring love and acceptance and just love ourselves as we're coming to the table, like as we're coming to the altar of consciousness and just accept our whole package, then it's like we go through the doors and we feel what oneness and love truly feels like and experience that like so tangibly and so in such a way that penetrates our consciousness so much that like if we don't retain that long enough, I think this is where people go, I need to go back, because we know there's a great value in that space to have that full acceptance and love.
Thank you. That's really profound and so enlightening. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about cannabis. I feel like in a much milder and gentler way, like I always call her consciousness medicine, because I feel like in these times it's so important to remain alert and remain conscious of like and keep like a tab on how we're feeling and experiencing the energy between each other. And she like heightens that for me. She like allows me to really be present with every single person. And that to me is a holy, endeavor. It's a very holy.
Yes, yes. Yeah, for me, cannabis is a great teacher in compassion of self. It's really
Yes.
profound. It's a real heart-opening medicine, in
Yeah.
particular CBD, I find.
Yeah. Yeah. All parts of that plant. I feel like that is her purpose, and why she's coming back so strong right now, all around, is like people are ready to accept that level of self-love. And it's so exciting.
Yes, yes.
Like it was
So,
underground before. It's like underground to love yourself that much and feel that free being authentic. But now it's like becoming more mainstream to love yourself.
yes, yes. I think that's the core teaching of cannabis is self-love,
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
for
So many,
sure.
yeah. But on this subject of forgiveness and non-judgment, it's so interesting because we're always getting the opportunity to practice that, like over and over and over again, like for against ourselves and also in life. We're always getting the opportunity to initiate to the next level of that. And I think like sometimes we think, oh, sometime the ascension is going to be over and we're going to just be like good and leveled out. And I think we just get more skilled at the integration, at seeing the thing and, moving into love and integrating and then going to the next level.
Interesting. Yeah, I've definitely had that experience. I thought it was going to be a pretty smooth ride. It has not been a smooth ride.
Well, and I think it's more challenging when we think it's going to be over. Like when we think that we've done all our work, then we can really be challenged because we're not expecting to like hit the floor again.
Right. Absolutely.
But my
So,
best times, I just want to say real quick, my best times of, like really like opening my heart is when I know that I have to cry this out. And my consciousness is just full blown witnessing the whole time me melting down and like loving myself the whole way through it, even though I might look like a puddle on the ground. To me, that it's become like a purely blissful experience of how awesome it is to be able to feel that deeply.
wow, that's really beautiful.
So I think our perspective just changes on what these emotions are. At first we think they're negative and positive, but then we're like, oh, but I have the capacity to, in my humanness, go that low, like go that deep, feel that like corners of myself in what used to be called depression, but now I call it just this deep dive into myself. And I'm like honored that I could even reach it, without judging myself. And then to swing the other way too and go, look what an honor it is that I can be this so blissful that I'm actually crying and that my heart hurts from crying. And I'm actually glad that I feel this level of pain about it. you know?
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Yes. Yes. So, I'd love to talk about ayahuasca with you. That's one of the most profound teachers there is. So what has ayahuasca brought to you as far as ascension?
So I definitely felt like ayahuasca, mama, grandmama, she's so very kind and compassionate in allowing you a ample integration. Like it's not like you go up and then down with ayahuasca. You come out and like you bring it out into your present moment. And I feel like it's a great aligner of all of our subtle bodies so that it's kind of like a reset or a reboot energy. But one thing that I definitely took out of that, and I take this into my whole life from that time, is, much of the first few times you would do something like that, there would be a lot of purging and releasing and healing and holding space for each other's healing and so forth. And there can be many layers of that. I mean, you can go through lifetimes of stuff in a few sessions. But I finally got to, it was probably my 20th journey where I had received the message. And I had very profound kundalini experiences during that time where I really felt the vine as the life force and really feeling myself like embody kundalini energy. But I remember one session in particular looking around at the circle and I could see everyone's powerful, empowered warrior or teacher or leader self, like standing strong, almost like a bunch of leaders come together with their power, sticks or swords or whatever, except for they were just standing behind all of the physical bodies that were leaned over bowls purging. And I had this profound awareness like, whoa, we're all like the shamans and the medicine people who decided to come here and meet here in order to affect reality. And yet no one here is ready to do that right now. Everyone's still in healing process. So the message I got back was, I will not return to this space until the others are ready to meet me here and do the work that is possible here beyond healing. So I feel like
I have
what I
glimpsed
mean?
what that work is. Yes, when I go into
Yeah,
ceremony, it's not healing for me. I've
right.
done my healing work outside of ceremony, and when I go in,
Mm-hmm.
I have these really profound visions. I have seen that ayahuasca space is where we bring in the blueprints for reality.
Oh,
That's
absolutely. I was
much
just
of
going to
what's
say,
happening
we're totally
right with
reconstructing reality. Yeah.
yes, that is what is happening in ayahuasca is through song and through the abilities that plant has to tap into the creator consciousness. We actually can completely rewrite the physical reality, and I believe that ayahuasca is going to save the world for that reason, and it
Well, I mean,
already is.
imagine like, 10, 12, 13 conscious, awake individuals who've done their healing work, meeting all, and maybe this is happening, and this is what I'd
Oh,
like to
this is
experience,
happening. This is
like coming
happening.
into
Yeah.
in that space, looking at each other, all fully awake, conscious, aware, dancing, singing, smiling, envisioning together this world in its purified state, in its healed state, in that space, that reality becomes the seed for this reality and it ripples out to here. So
Yes. Yes.
that's the
Seen that.
shamanic work. Yeah.
Yes, and I have seen that. That is happening, and it's very profound. And there are portals that are opened during Aya
Well,
ceremonies as well,
and
especially on
that's the other thing.
days.
I
Mm-hmm.
I've been in a ceremony where quite the opposite was happening as well, where two opposing elders were almost like using that space to battle. Like I felt like I was in a battle zone of a video game. And
Wow.
like a couple other women and me realized, oh no, like the masculine has not got this under control right now. Like this is becoming a war zone in the spiritual realm, fighting for who's going to lead. And the women in the room, like we literally had to, like I almost whipped out my sword in that ceremony. We were like having to hold super strong space to allow this sort of like ego trip to play itself out while basically like pounding the stick. And I realized, this is such a delicate, sacred space that not everyone should be like running free in there just doing any damn thing they want. Like this is like the sacred underworkings of reality space. So if you're going to be going in
Yes.
there, right, like that's a place to be honoring, and to acknowledge the co-creation capacity.
Yes.
Yeah, it's serious, and it's reflected in our physical world when that happens. Like we see wars in this world when like people are irresponsible in the psychedelic community.
Yeah, I had a situation in a ceremony once where I got this message that in having any negative thoughts, I was potentially polluting the planet. It was like so disturbing. I was like, oh my God.
Well, it's
Oh my
different in
God.
a psychedelic space than it is in this slowed down version because we have enough time. Well, and it's starting to shift really rapidly, but in this time space, before being, like completely ascended, we have time to like experience the negative, find the positive polarity, combine them, alchemize them, and up level. Like we still have time to do that math, but when you're in that realm, like you're already in that altered space, it's kind of like expected that you're either there to heal or you're there to like be in mastery, so that you already know that you're there as a creator, right?
Right. Yeah, yes, that's exactly right.
So if you're there healing, that's fine. That's your business. You're self-contained. You're pointed inward, like you're working out your own inner structures. And sometimes you have to put your focus on the negative to get it to move, right? And to purge it or whatever. But if you're outwardly focused and you realize now you're co-creating, then yeah, like you put a negative thought out there, you're like creating a reality. Like you're in creation mode.
Right.
Yeah. So this is where I feel like we've been like not as well educated in the psychedelic community, and why I'm so glad it's becoming more, like legal and widespread, so we can have these conversations. And it's one reason I stepped away from it for a while, because I saw a lot of heavy duty, irresponsible behavior, and I was like, yeah, I gotta step out of this zone. But
Yeah, I love that you said this because I've seen that too. And I mean, seeing that ayahuasca ceremony is creating the foundation of reality. I think that's
yes.
really, really amazing. And I think it's it's almost hard to get your head around and to accept and to understand.
And especially when you're in the space, like, and if you haven't prepared properly and you're just like going in an experimental state, this
Yeah,
is where
don't
I've
do that.
seen
No.
the most problem, because you
Oh
are
yeah.
opening portals, you are inviting, desperate souls who would like to still hold on to this reality or get a toe in, or get, like that's where you get entity attachments and so forth, when people are not responsibly opening those portals, and they're just like, let me just see what I can do here. And I've had to hold a lot of heavy duty space for that during, an 8-hour period where I'm also tripping out and somebody else is going down that rabbit hole, and you're just trying to like maintain the space. Like that's not a fun space for anybody either.
Right. Right.
So I guess the message is just going in with honor and, like being respectful of the plant. And I love that about you, Tara, because you do hold such a reverence for the medicines, and you are being an awesome teacher and a guide for people to enter that space in that way. I was super lucky when I was first introduced to plant medicines. The man that I was dating, he basically introduced it to me like, this is sacrament. This is how you meet your God self. And you always want to have someone there as a shaman, or like can hold space with you in case anything starts going wrong, or in case you don't know what's happening, like a guide of some kind. And so I went into that reality with that sort of outline for myself. And I'm super grateful that I did. It helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls that a lot of people don't get the luxury of missing.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's true. I think it's really different to go in with a lot of preparation versus to go in and just kind of wing it and see what it's like. And
Yes.
it's okay, whatever anyone does is okay. But it's special. It's really a special medicine, and it's Mother Earth, that's what I feel. It's the
Definitely.
consciousness of Mother Earth.
And I feel it's Mother Earth's gift to us to assist us in understanding what the ascension looks like. Like it's already built into her that she knows.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Right.
amazing.
So where do you feel like we are in our ascension journey right now?
Well, I feel like we have just moved through the main portal to the new world. And so we're pretty much in the very beginnings and newness of that new Earth space, where there's still almost like holographic imprints of the old around us, but they're more like hollow and the structure is not solid underneath them anymore. So it's important, of course, like people who haven't chosen or to look at or don't even know what the new earth is, they're sort of in a strange position now, because I feel like enough of us have, I guess, held the knowing is how I'd like to put it, held the knowing, because we are on the new frontier of creating the new earth. So we are creating it as we go. Like it's being created by each of us. Like having this conversation is part of the creation, and we are co-creating it together. So we have already opened it. It's already being like journeyed into, and yet it's still very new and pliable and, moldable. And a lot of like, we have to kind of right now do the job of filtering. Like, are people bringing in the old stuff and trying to like put it in the newly shiny, like new structure? Like if you're moving into a brand new home, are you bringing all the old carpets full of dust mites and stuff? We're like doing a little bit of filtering of that. Like, no, you can't bring that thought form. Like you can't bring that belief. Like you can't say those things here. Like we're kind of having to be that.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's like
That's really tricky. That can be really, really tricky.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And I mean, some of us are changing jobs into almost like, I mean, of course there's still free agency. So people are all experiencing their own version of the new, but there is the collective new too. So there's the collective new earth that's being co-created by the massive consciousness that is ready to move into that fully. And then each person's version is going to contain some of the old and some opening for the new, to the extent that they're educated and are ready. And like, some people still have a lot of clearing out to do. Like everybody's at a different level of, readiness in that regard. And nothing is, right or wrong. It's just different people's, what the makeup is right now.
Right.
Yeah. But I do feel like we're in such a time that, I mean, I think that plant medicines can be really helpful to just catapult people right into this place. But I also feel the other is true and people can just step into it so much easier than we could 20 years ago, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, just by getting really present with themselves, just by maybe doing one, simple practice on a regular basis. Like it's becoming a lot more accessible. And I do think, I think it's thanks to the plant medicines that have been being used over the years to like cultivate that readiness too.
Yes. And, I'm thinking about what you said about consciousness and how we're creating, and it's so true. And it's really important that we keep our words positive and our beliefs positive, because when we entertain negative beliefs, or negative stories, we can be creating unnecessary suffering.
So I'd like to reframe that a little just for the sake of unity versus polarity.
Right.
And that is like, I like to tell empowering stories versus disempowering stories.
I like
So
that.
So sometimes a negative experience in the old world like could be perceived as, a bad story. But if you can incorporate when you're telling the story what you are getting out of it and how it's empowering you, and gosh, I'm going through this heavy time, but it's bringing out so many strengths in me. Like I'm having this heartbreak, but it's making me realize my capacity to love. And if we can begin to speak in this way, then there isn't anything that we can't talk about. Because sometimes people feel like, well, if I'm going to be positive all the time, then I'm not being real. I'm not really telling you like it is. I'm just glossing over, But when it's like, are the words you're speaking empowering you though? Like, are you telling a story that's empowering you, right? Because you can talk about the same thing. Like you can talk about having anxiety from a defeated place, or you can talk about having anxiety from a knowledge that you're shifting frequencies and it's challenging you to, learn practices to center yourself, or it's challenging you to understand vibration in a different way, or, you can like make it an empowering story instead of one that takes you down.
That's a really, really great insight. I love that. So that it kind of helps with accepting what is.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, we can't avoid any of the things we're going to feel. Like, ascension doesn't mean you're always going to feel good. Like sometimes when we're dumping old beliefs, we're dumping the neural pathways too in our brain, and we feel the chemicals in our bloodstream and we feel yucky, and maybe it makes us feel depressed. But if we're aware of the process, then we can be like, okay, I'm experiencing a belief detox right now, and it's not making me feel good, but I can't wait till all this old belief is out of my system. Like, I'm so glad I'm detoxing. Like once someone does ayahuasca and purges the whole time, like I've done trips where I've purged for 8 hours straight, and I could come out of there
Wow.
and be like, that is the worst experience of my life. Or I could be like, I'm so glad that I got all of that out of me, because geez, I didn't know that was all in me.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really
I
is
love
like,
that.
is this empowering me or is this disempowering me? And you can ask that about anything you're saying, like anything at all. Is this story that I'm saying, or this statement, is this empowering me or disempowering me? And then we can just tweak all the stories to be on our side. And then we're never lying to ourselves. We're just telling the new story about it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I also love, I mean, no one can prove you're a bodhisattva, but you can feel in your heart if you have this inclination, like, I don't want anyone to be left behind. Like, I know everyone belongs in the oneness. And so having that story, you can then back up anything like, okay, that's just where they're at in their journey. Like, they probably are really wounded. I'm just going to love them more. Or, geez, they're being so angry and harsh. Someone probably was really harsh to them. Like, I'm gonna be nice to them, and that's probably what they need. Like, we have this whole different backstory when we like choose it, that changes the way we respond to every situation.
Right. Right. Yeah. So how did you discover that you're a bodhisattva?
Well, I think it's just one of those. It probably was during a sacred plant journey, I think. But I mean, I think once I heard of the concept, studying in Asia and like really feeling like a resonance with that, like, well, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like it's all for one, because when you have that awareness that everyone is you and you are everyone, that there really isn't a separation, then you're not like really doing that much sacrificial service. You're really just wanting your whole self to go. You're like, I want all of me to be, aware and ascended. And like, each person is a representation in my mind of an aspect of me. So have you ever seen that little video called The Egg?
No.
That I highly recommend. If you go to YouTube and just write in The Egg, and it's just a really short video, like, depiction of this idea, this bodhisattva idea. And it's really just being able to realize that everyone gets a chance to be and see everything. And that's what this idea of like past lives or multiple incarnations or multiple timelines is like. Your consciousness has to touch everything. Like, you are the victim and the victimizer. You are, like, the one that was left, and you are the leaver. You are like all of the things. And as soon as you can touch into all those places in you and like realize that is the only way that it makes you whole, is to recognize that's all part of humanness. Like, that's all makes up the whole human. And that whether we did it in this lifetime or another lifetime or another dimension, to have compassion, that's how we really get to this all encompassing love, is when we're like, you know what? Everyone's got to taste it. Like, everyone has to taste what that feels like, both sides, the bitter and the sweet. And at that place, there's no longer room for judgment. Like, there's no longer this idea, oh, I would never do that. You're like, well, it's impossible to escape in the wholeness that I would ever get out of having any experience of humanness. Like, maybe I just don't remember it, or I'm suppressing it, or whatever. But, like, I've had the remembrance of like destroying an entire planet. And I'm like, I know that part of my feeling is like the opposite now, like feeling like I want to be present for the liberation of the entire planet, for the empowerment and the spiritual fulfillment and love of the entire planet. And that's like the wholeness speaking through us.
Yes.
It's just my perspective. Yeah. But I love that little video, the egg and the egg. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love everything you've said. It's just been a really profound conversation. I love as well, like the detachment that you're sharing you have around, your thoughts and feelings and experiences of being a human, like you're really seeing that as a an experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is really what we're here to have the treasure of, is like our spiritual consciousness wanted to infuse with matter and like wanted to see what would happen if the two came together and like had full awareness of each other. So it's like being fully conscious with your divine nature in a body. Like, what else is there? Like, what's possible after that? And so like when we recognize the only way to infuse every single cell with our consciousness is also every single memory, every single possibility, every single timeline, like all of that makes up humanness, because humanness has the capacity to do great things and love deeply, and also to do terrible atrocities and like hate on just the same level of intensity as a blissful, ecstatic connection. So it's like humanness is all of it. It's like this idea of heaven and hell all crammed into the physical body. And then our divine nature just comes in and says, yeah, I love human. I am divine human. I love human and I'm divine. And we become this now avatar of ourself, where instead of being consciousness separated from the body, like having these grand capacities of creation, we now are creator beings in the flesh as the avatars of our consciousness. And it's really becomes like a video game. It's like you really are in lucid dream state, just like the plant medicines teach us. They teach us, I feel like, to be the avatar, like to recognize we can shift things so quickly just with a thought.
Yes, I really appreciate that you use the phrase lucid dream. That's definitely a message I got from ayahuasca, is that we are in a lucid dream, especially now. And the more we are conscious about what vibration we're in and what thoughts we're holding, the more consciousness we have, the more powerful we are.
Absolutely. And that's where just doing the work continues to, like, we continue to hunt out and discover where we're still carrying like these strings and tethers to this old dialogue of the dream, like the asleep dream, because we're really moving from we've always been in the dream, but we were like the sleeping dream. And now we're like turning into the waking dream. We're waking up in the dream and we're becoming the powerful dreamers, where we have that capacity, right? But we get to know it, and wherever we can detect those, beliefs or running thought patterns or emotions or stories that would block us from that or would tell a different story, that's where we get to go in and rewrite that. We get to go in and author a new tale or close that book and like start the new one that says, I am the lucid dreamer,
Yes, absolutely. I love this. And, I find that it's also like the possibility of like reverse engineering, like getting a chance to like live the way we want our reality to be.
So
as if
good.
it is.
Yes, I love that you said that. Yes, because we basically have been spending all these years and lifetimes and eons even like getting all these reversal codes. Like we've been experiencing them, like all these things. We have those codes now in our DNA from our ancestry, from our past lives, our ancient lineages, they're all encoded in us. And now, like at this stage of the game where we're aligned with the galactic center, like we have the, planetary influences just right, the Earth's resonance is like heightening and we're becoming really aware of these portals of energy. It's like we really do have the opportunity right now to reverse engineer all these reversal codes. Like we get a chance to go, great, we did all that in that like backwards distorted way, and now what does it look like when we do it in the awesome beautiful love way? Like we just get to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. We really do. And that's probably the hardest part for people, I think, don't you think? Like really accepting that could possibly be true.
It's been really challenging for me, but it does work. And what's cool about it is it's interesting how it actually can free you up from attachment, because to allow you to have actions without attachment, because you can, if you know that you can reverse engineer your wealth by feeling wealthy, by just deciding that you are, and you could lucid dream that you're wealthy and make it so by holding your frequency high and all these kinds of things. If you know that, then you don't worry about like ideas that, limiting beliefs around having to strive or other things. If you know that you can manifest, then it changes things.
I love it. And it's true for everything. Like,
yeah. Go ahead.
Relationships too. And like all of our situations, it's like when we are looking at it and it looks like a limiting pattern, or a limiting belief or a limiting experience. And when we can realize that we're the creators of it and we can shift it and lead the frequency. Like we often think we don't have the ability to lead the frequency, especially like in a relationship. We think, oh, well, if the other person doesn't meet me, then it's just not going to work. But the other person is actually you too. And that's like the tricky mind twist that is always like part of relationship, is when we become confident in who we are and like the oneness in ourselves, and we lead with that confidence, we lead with that knowing, like we also lead these beautiful things coming into our life. We're creating them as we go. And even if one structure fails us, so to speak, like one relationship doesn't seem to match up, it will immediately be replaced by the one that matches our frequency. Like that's what I've found over and over, is like as long as you continue to hone and refine your personal frequency to the leading creator, then your relationships will match you. Yeah.
I love that. So, are there other? Are there other plant medicines that come to mind that have taught you about ascension?
Salvia is a really simple medicine that a lot of people don't play with too much, but one thing it really did teach me is the simplicity of being, just being, like completely being, like a plant is just standing there, like looking at the room without thoughts. Like the profoundness of even just one journey with salvia for me was the no mind state, like really accessing absolutely no thoughts. And if you've never been able to get there, if your meditation practice has never got you there, and like I'm grateful that my years of meditation has allowed me to get to that space fairly easily. But a lot of people still tell me they can't reach there. Their mind's always going. And so like salvia is an awesome teacher of just no mind. And that it's probably one of the most helpful things in this day and age, where we're like the onslaught of frequencies and people, and like there's a high level of misunderstanding right now about what's going on. And so we have this great influx of this idea of mental illness. And since our systems are not set up to support spiritual awakening and to educate people on that, we have people ending up on medications and in mental hospitals, when something like, doing a plant medicine that teaches you to be present, that's fairly it doesn't take a lot of balls, so to speak, to do salvia. Like some plant medicines are a little more, hair raising and challenging to the psyche, but I think salvia is a very gentle medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It can be a tricky one for a lot of people.
Do you find that?
Yeah, salvia is oftentimes a pretty tough experience. For me, it was pretty weird. I remember I did it probably like 15 years ago in my early 20s. I remember I experimented with salvia, and it like was an experience of like being sucked into the couch. It was very strange and like
Oh, weird.
confusing. Yeah, it was weird.
See,
And a lot of
again, I
people
feel like
talk
some of
to these strange experiences.
but again, like unsupported experiences where we're just like hanging out, like trying this thing we've heard about. Like it's different if someone is able to prepare you for what you're going to experience, I think,
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah, it was on a whim. It was not done in like a sacred container or anything like that back then,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people's weird experiences come from. I think, like when you don't have any idea what you're about to encounter, and then you do. Like no one ever prepared me for what ketamine was going to be like. And I wish I would have like been prepared for that in a better way, because I really didn't have a good experience with that medicine. And I think that it could be helpful. Like it does teach disassociation, which could be helpful emotionally and mentally, like if you're needing to be able to detach yourself from an experience, but without really knowing what's going to happen, like forced detachment can be really like discombobulating.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, like the education and having the sacred space, I feel like are just two important things. And granted, not everyone is going to find themselves in that position, but if possible, like if possible, that's where shows like this that you're doing are so awesome and important right now, so that people who haven't yet encountered the medicines can like move into it in, a wiser way.
Thank you, Stasia. It's been really excellent having you on the show. And again, what's your website for people to find more about you?
Thank you, Tara. It's blissinthehouse.com. So no dashes, just blissinthehouse.com.
Beautiful.
And yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I like to end the show by saying, may the plants be with you.
Yes, yes, indeed.